Hi, it's Donna here, back with you today with another video. And I am still on my sketchbook mixed media roll. So I did find this sketchbook when I was having a clear out. It's an old one. You can see here it's got different projects that I was working on, different patterns I was working on, and some cute little illustrations as well. But I noticed that other than those first few pages, this sketchbook hasn't been used at all. So in a bid to try and be creative every day, just for 5-10 minutes every day, I decided that I wanted to do some sketchbook pages. Now, by this, I don't mean works of art in a sketchbook, and I don't mean completed pictures. I just mean a few minutes every day to work on some colour, different mediums, different paints, to take some time out for myself, for my physical well-being, my mental well-being, and just to generally help me to develop creatively. I thought I would share my first few pages with you. So I have 5 pages to share with you in this video. I'm going to reiterate again, these are not works of art. This is just my own creative expression and time for myself. However, if you are more into the junk journaling, paper crafting side of things, you can really easily adapt something like this to junk journaling, so you can create some simple patterns in your junk journal, or you could work in a sketchbook and use whatever you create as inspiration for a journaling card or a page spread or some patterned paper. So it all really does feed into the same thing. And at the end of the day, our aim, the thing that brings us all together, is our love for creating in whatever medium that may be. I am hoping to have put together some freebies for you based on what I create in this video. I'm doing this voiceover before I've done that. So fingers crossed I've been able to put something together. You'll know before me, if you're watching this video, that I would like to try and put something together to demonstrate how, even if you feel like art isn't your cup of tea, you can still link these ideas into your preferred method of crafting. So fingers crossed, there will be a link in the description box for you, and I will have a freebie for you to download and use. So as you can see, I prepped my page by just going around with some washi tape to make a nice border. And a little tip is to make your washi tape longer than your page, and you can turn it over and it will stop your page from lifting when you're working on it, which is quite useful as your paper gets wet and starts to buckle a little bit. So for this first page, I decided to just do some basic flowers. I wanted to use red, orange and pink together because I love that combination. I think they make a really quirky combination together. The orange and the red that I chose are fine, but that pink from the Artex paint pen is pulling very purple, which I didn't like at all. I did then change it to another one, which I still didn't like, so I ended up reaching for my most favourite and most used pink Posca pen, which gave me the right shade in the end. So these are obviously completely unrealistic flowers. I'm just drawing basic flower shapes and colouring them in. I did also bring in a few lighter shades of the orange and also a darker shade, just to make some contrast and break those colours up a little bit. And then once I had those kind of first shapes down, I just went in and added details, so some little centre bits, just trying to match between the 3 colours. Again, I'm just adding lines, dots, dashes, anything really to add some character to the petals, but without worrying about whether they look like any realistic flower that I may have seen or that I may know. Also overlapping them and just trying to fill up the page as best I can with these different flower shapes. Some of them I do actually paint over, but you'll be able to see that with paint pens, because they are opaque, it's really easy to do that. You do sometimes need a few coats, but you can paint over something if you don't like it, which I think is a benefit to using acrylic or an acrylic paint pen. So once I was happy to a point with what I'd done with the flowers, I decided to fill in the background in a lovely bright yellow. And here's one of the flowers that I was covering here. So I just did a coat, let it dry, and then went back over it with another coat, and you can see it covers it really well. And once the whole page is finished, you can't see at all that I've gone over that. I also, with some of this cream colour, I just went over and darkened some of those lines, made them a little bit more prominent. And at this point, I was just going backwards and forwards, adding little details, making things a little bit more noticeable, and just messed about with it really until I was happy. I then came in with a mid-shade green to fill in the gaps in the background. Over the top of that, I then went in with a lighter shade of green and just overlapped some leaves on top of the ones I have just done. An optional step is to go in with some coloured pencil, but I did do, just to give some extra texture, some extra definition to some of the flowers. So just adding some line work around the outside of the petals, a little bit of shading, just randomly across the flowers. So this is where I hide this flower here. I didn't like the placement of it. So I thought my best bet, because it was orange and I wanted to cover it with yellow, was to actually do a layer of white first. So I did that, let that dry, and then I went over it with the yellow. And then I just added that little pink flower in there that you can see in the middle, and added some line work onto the leaves. Just going around the outside with two different colours of pencil, and then just putting a line down the middle. This is what the page looked like once I had finished. And then I decided to work on the page opposite. Now, I do have to apologise. I don't know why, but for some reason, the camera was focusing on my hand and the pen instead of the page. So the footage is a little bit blurry. Just to begin with, it doesn't last too long. But on this opposite page, I did decide to use the same colours, and I just did a page full of leaves. And I started with the lightest colour, did loads of leaves in the background, and then I moved from light to dark, and then once I'd got to the darkest orange, I then did the greens on top of that. So I just built up the leaves to create a pattern. Very simple process. Quite a good one to do if you want to calm your mind, or if you're feeling a little bit anxious or stressed. There's not too much thinking involved. You can just build up your leaves. I kept mine to a very simple shape to just keep it as simple as possible. And I did find this one very therapeutic. Here I'm just filling in the background in that yellow again. Just working my way in between the lightest colour at the back before finally adding the green leaves on the top. And by using the same colours on both pages, just gives a little bit of cohesiveness. Again, it's just a choice, but I would say out of all of the pages in today's video, this one is my favourite. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, I decided to go with the blues. I'm working on that right hand side first, and I just, for no reason, just decided to do lots of circles. So I just go through all the different colours of blue, filling in circles, different sizes. Again, just kind of scattering them across the page. This does end up as quite a busy page in the end, because I just kind of had fun doing patterns and different drawings on top of these circles. But if you don't like the look of how this ends up looking, you could always just keep it to the circles. It would be a small 5-minute creative moment where you can just focus on the page and set yourself up for the day, or take a little bit of time out before bed. You can take these pages as far as you want. Make them as simple or as busy as you're feeling. I do think sometimes the way doodles turn out is a reflection on your mood at that time. So I think I was obviously either feeling either slightly chaotic or slightly enthusiastic. I did do this just before I left for Amsterdam, so I was perhaps looking forward to my trip. But yeah, I do think when you look back on what you've done, it can show. It is almost like looking at your state of mind on paper. So you can see there in the background, as I've been talking, I added some purple circles in the background, and then I went in with some green shades on the top, and I just continued adding circles on top of each other, just filling in all of the white space that I could still see. And then to top it off, I decided to add some silver as well, and just did some circles in silver. Now, I was going to leave it as this. That's why I'm taking the tape off, and I start on the opposite page, and then I go back periodically and add to the page I've just done. So moving on to that page on the left, I again am using the same colours, and I'm kind of just doing these larger kind of like blob type shapes. And I'm not really thinking out here what I want a page to look like. I'm just putting down a shape that I feel like drawing. And at this moment in time, it just happened to be blobs. I used that really gorgeous dark green colour to fill the background. It's like a grey, green. Really like that colour. And then decided to use the darker blue to outline each shape. And then once I'd done that, I then outlined within that in the silver. Okay, so here's when I decided to add some white pen to this page. So I just went into the shapes that I have already drawn, added some other lines on the inside, on the outside, some dots, and just various shapes that I felt fitted. I also went in with coloured pencils and added some extra details using those. I also wanted to pop a black, so I doodled some flowers and leaves over the top and added in some extra lines, and then I decided to do the same on the opposite page. This is where I started kind of hopping between the pages. I wanted to keep this left-hand side quite plain because the other side was so busy, so I didn't want to overcrowd it. So I just concentrated on clean lines, straight lines, didn't add too much extra to the shapes that were already there, that I'd already drawn. But I did also add white to tie it in with the right-hand side. And then I decided to add a little white border around both of the pages to finish them off. And this is our fifth and final page for today. I just went with 3 colours, so a yellow, like a lime green, and like a mid-tone green. This was a really simple page. I did stripes going all the way down the page, just alternated those colours. And then over the top, I actually do something called neurographic art. You may have heard of it, you may not. It's become popular in recent years, and although I don't quite know the science of it completely, I will try and put a little definition on the screen if I can find one. But I think it's supposed to help with anxiety or with calming the mind. I think it has mental health benefits, and essentially the way it works, I believe, is you make these lines and then you round each intersection. So wherever those lines meet, you round them off. And again, although I don't know the science, it apparently helps you to connect the right hand side of your brain with the left hand side or something like that. Again, don't take my word for it, but essentially that's what I'm doing here. So you can see I just drew lots of lines and then rounded off those intersections, and you get these kind of funny blobby type shapes. That was a really quick and simple page. Didn't take too much brain power. I could just concentrate on what I was doing, and I ended up with something interesting at the end. And it turns out that I did have time to put a little something together for you. I have this freebie on my Ko-fi. It's available now. I will leave the link to it in the description. And I've put together some different design elements, labels, tags, using the illustrations that I did in the sketchbooks. You may, of course, help yourself to that on Ko-fi. And thank you so much for joining me today. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye.